Hello, have a good day. My name is Leonardo and I will be presenting this subject, which is the development of subjective evaluation. So for Valuation, there are three main components for subjective evaluation. The first one is abstractness, so choices here are based in abstract characteristics, for example, aesthetics of a given good. Second, absoluteness would be expressed in a trait of numerical representation between two different types of goods with different amounts. And so this numerical representation would be invariant among these goods. Last one, integration of dimension means that both abstract and concrete characteristics will be taken into account according to their relevance into a unique subjective magnitude. So this subjective magnitude can be inferred from choices. So for this dual choice experiment, I had three types of different stickers, which I showed to individual children. And then these children would tell me, would order them according to their preference, from the one that they liked the most to the least. So I obtained A, B, and C. And with these different types of stickers, I carried out dual comparisons, dual choices between them. So next, what children did is that they were offered different amounts of sticker B and sticker A in this example. So when offering 1B versus 1A, if they chose 1B, then I increased the amount of A until they chose specifically a given amount of A. And so I would note in here that the trade-off point would be somewhere in between 2 and 3. So for this example, I would say 2.5. And so I did the same with diets 2 and 3. And let's say that in the second one, I obtained that 1C was more or less 2.5 of B's. If in the third diet, I could observe a value, yes, which would represent cardinal transitivity, then I could say that the three past components exist within each children. So it's important to note that each children would express his own set of values. So for this experiment, I took into account the amount of children who showed this cardinal transitive representation and those who didn't. So my research question is if at a given point in a given stage of development, I could observe this cardinal transitive representation. And if it did, I would expect for the majority of children in a given stage to actually show this sort of representation, trade-off representation. So these are the specific characteristics of my sample. So mainly I dealt with preschool and different grades of elementary children. And these were the stimuli that I used for the experiment. So for the amount of children which showed cardinal transitivity, for these are the total of children. So actually, independently of each of the groups that I had, most of them didn't show cardinal transitivity as I just showed you, and only these specific amounts actually did. So I could say that in most of them, inside of each group, cardinal transitivity does not exist as such in this specific grades. However, there might be differences in their choices, as these could be abstract. So to exemplify this, something that might happen in one diet is that a given children might choose immediately 2 units of the opposing sticker. Yes, so this would tell me that children are choosing for the numerosity. Yes, which would be a concrete characteristic. So what you can see in this table is that in one of the 3 diets that I showed you, 6 children actually in one of these diets showed this pattern. Yes, they didn't choose by the immediate biggest numerosity. And so in here, in 2 of the diets, they didn't choose by this immediate numerosity. Yes. And so we can see roughly that there are differences in the distribution for preschool and elementary children, while for second, third, and fourth graders, almost every single one of them in two of the three diets, they expressed that they care about something else that is not just the biggest numerosity. So there are actually statistical differences between preschool children and elementary children. So with this exception between first grade, while between elementary grades, we cannot see this difference. So this tells me that preschool children are basing many of their choices for a concrete characteristic, which would be the immediate biggest numerosity. Yes. Then for the integration of dimensions, I took these cases, the past cases, which in three of their three diets, they expressed something more than a choice by the biggest numerosity. And so what we can see is that I have this specific amount. So actually, there are more children in elementary school which express abstract choices. And also between these children, I could match their initial preference, the one that they told me, with their actual choice. So I would be able to confirm if the preference that they told me, for example, that they prefer B to A in equal amounts, I could know if their choices actually expressed that or didn't, because they could tell me that they preferred B to A, but in their choice, they could actually take A as the preferred one. So for preschool children with abstract, that expressed abstract choices, only one reached this match between the ordinal transitivity for the initial revealed preference and their choice. And so we can see that there are differences between preschool and elementary children, except for first grade, in which we had a few subjects. So in here, we only find statistical differences between preschoolers and second elementary graders. While if we compare preschool with the other grades, it almost reaches significance, but not for the Bonferroni requirement. So qualitatively, we could say that there are differences, but not quantitatively. So for discussion, cardinal transitivity seems to exist in around the 10% for each of these groups with no statistical differences. And well, if we take into account both the quantitative and the qualitative findings in this study, we could say that there is some transition point between elementary and preschoolers regarding abstraction particularly, and the integration of dimensions. And this would be consistent with neuroanatomical and psychological studies, which find structural and cognitive differences in the above-mentioned stages. However, there are some methodological constraints. The first one is the amount of subjects per each group. So we could see that particularly for first elementary graders and preschoolers, particularly in the analysis of integration of dimensions, there are a low amount of subjects. Other is that in other studies, for example, Padua-Chioppa studies, a need and a satisfaction degree are included. So goods are actually consumed. So in their experiments, they provoke thirst to their subject, which is something that I actually cannot do for ethical matters with children. And also preferences are assessed through multiple hundreds of trials. So unfortunately, for the characteristics of this sample, as I asked for permission in schools, they wouldn't allow me to do many trials. So I was not allowed to make many trials. I was only allowed to make one. So the conclusion is that, well, findings in this study are taken into consideration with further replications, as studies like this for preferences, subjective preferences in small children are really scarce. And well, also in the same line, the conditions in this study should be replicated with bigger amount of participants, and also having into account the different methodological constraints that I mentioned, to either try to search for a different experimental design, perhaps with less subjects, but with more controlled, with more control of the variables inside of the design of the experiment. So thank you for your attention. This is my email for any question that you have. This is the lab where I currently am working, and these are the references. So thank you very much for your time.